Welcome back. AUC's Project University on the Square is a collection of art, photos, videos, and accounts of the January 25th revolution. Today, the University on the Square has collected more than 4,000 photographs and over 300 videos. Moreover, oral historians in the economic and business history research center have conducted over 50 interviews with political activists, student demonstrators, and academics to capture a full picture of the revolution and the incidents that have been taking place ever since. And joining us this morning in our studio to shed more light on this very interesting project is Mr. Stephen Orgola, University Archivist. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Mr. Orgola, first of all, tell us more about the University on the Square.
Sure. Well, back in February 2011, in the early days of the revolution, a number of people at AUC had the idea that history was happening and we should somehow document this as it's happening. So we got together people with many backgrounds at AUC, and the idea was that many people from the American University in Cairo, in different capacities, faculty, students, staff, they all somehow participated. They observed the events. They participated at the square. They had something to say. They had photographs that they took of events that they witnessed. And we thought that we had this community of people with material about the revolution. Let's try to capture that. And so that was one of the aims. We knew we had these people who had material, and we needed to capture that for history. And so, as you mentioned, we've collected many photographs. Right now it's almost 5,000. 300 or so videos taken from the square and other locations with people's mobile phone cameras, for example. Also, we did oral history interviews. That was a very important part of the project. So we knew that people had stories to tell. They had memories they wanted to express. So we sat down with people. We had interviews, typically for an hour, and we asked them about their experiences. And now that's up to about 150 interviews that we've recorded. We also decided that we would collect artwork, we would collect newspapers, we would collect banners and signs and bullets, any physical objects related to the revolution as well that people might donate. And now these materials, the digital ones, the interviews, the videos, the photos, are available on the website for the project.
Okay, it's an all AUC project, right?
We went through AUC as sort of the initial focus, but we thought that if someone from AUC had a friend that had a story to tell, we would also ask them. For example, we had one faculty member who would go to a barber on Muhammad Mahmoud Street, and this barber had many stories to tell. He was very excited about how he defended his neighborhood, and so we did an interview with him. He's not officially AUC, but he's part of the larger network or community.
Things never end, you know, a lot of things coming up. So tell us more about the future plans.
Sure.
Every day we have something, especially the month of June, we'll have a lot of things.
Exactly. Well, that was a debate within the project team. When do we cut off? What's our end point? And we ultimately realized that we couldn't just set a specific date. As far as the project activities, we will continue to interview people who are recommended to us, people who have stories to tell, as long as we can find them. As long as people have photographs to donate, we'll continue accepting them and adding them to our site. And it is interesting when you listen to the interviews over the course of the project, the different tone or mood that people had right after the 18 days, and then in the spring, and then in November. And I think that's an important historical aspect as well, how people's impressions of the current day affect their memories of the past.
Mr. Stephen Orgola, University Archivist, now can we say that you just said that this is a documentation for history of the Egyptian revolution. Is it also available for academics, for people who are making some research regarding the revolution or on the revolution of Egypt?
Absolutely. I mean, the goal is not just to collect it, but also to make it accessible. And the beauty of having much of this material digital, photographs, videos, the interviews, people can access them from any place in the world. And we have had requests, people doing lectures, people preparing classes have come to us and asked to use the material. We also plan to exhibit some of the physical artifacts. We've had a request from Australia to display some of our banners and signs and other artifacts for an exhibition at a Museum of Democracy in Australia. So So we are very much encouraging use of the materials.
You're talking about people that you've met, talking about them on the 25th of January, and then during February, and then later. Of course, each of these dates will bring us different mood, right? Tell us more about this. Up till now, of course, it's the continuation of the whole thing.
That's an important aspect. The idea that history doesn't have a start date and an end date and is very clear. It's much more fluid than that. And so, from each of the demonstrations in the last spring of 2011, we went to the square and we collected leaflets and pamphlets. So for each protest, we have an idea of what were the demands being made. And the same goes for the interviews. As I mentioned, at different points, people had different impressions of how history had developed. We even had the idea of interviewing some people in the early days and now interviewing them again. And I'm sure they'll have very different impressions. So what you say is a very good point.
Okay, Mr. Stephen, being an archivist means that you definitely came across a lot of revolutions that have taken place across the world on different times throughout history. How different do you think is the Egyptian revolution, having been in the heart of the incidents?
Sure. Well, speaking from a documentation point of view, we know that this was the most televised revolution in the world. There was so much media coverage. There are probably more images, people's photographs, videos, etc., of this one event than maybe any other event in history. And so part of the challenge was, how do you collect so much material? But we also had to be conscious of the fact that this material might disappear. It's on someone's mobile phone if it's a video. Maybe they have a few photos on their camera, they run out of space, they need to delete them. So
people might forget what happened.
Exactly, and also the memories as well. So we knew that we really had to intervene now. We couldn't wait, let's say with other past events where someone has a box full of photographs and when they die, their family gives us the photographs. We couldn't count on that. So we needed to make an intervention right away. That was important. But it is a very different situation. For example, in the archives, in the Rare Books Library at AUC, people come and they say, can we have pictures of Egypt in the 50s during that revolution, or the Suez Crisis, or the 67 War? There's very few photographs that relate to those events, and this is completely the opposite. There's so much material.
So you're talking about the media coverage, of course, and documentation of the revolution. But maybe I feel curious to know about it because of course, you have an idea about many other revolutions that took place in the world. How do you see the Egyptian revolution itself?
Well, I think the main similarity is that in reading history, revolutions are never 6 months or 1 week. It's always several years. With the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, did it really end until Bonaparte, actually? And I think that's an impression that people, a misapprehension people had in the beginning, that, 18 days, start, finish, it's over. And I think people have come to realize it's a much more long, gradual process that involves a whole host of political and social developments. And I think it's hard for people to understand that sometimes. I think they're beginning to understand that now.
So this is the fastest revolution ever.
It's something along, it was fast, then slow, then fast again. It's got a bit of everything.
Okay, reading history, and now that you're an archivist, do you think that the Egyptian revolution so far is relatively faring good compared to other revolutions maybe that are taking place these days or over the past year and a half now in the region?
Well, certainly there was some tragic loss of life at Tahrir and Muhammad Mahmoud Street and other places, but just looking at other countries in the region, we have to be thankful that we don't have the level of violence as in Syria or in Libya and that kind of discord. And of course, the fact that we just had elections that went through peacefully without violence is really remarkable.
I was just going to ask about the elections and the runoff as well.
Right. I mean, another historical moment, and actually we, in the library for the project, we also collected the political posters and leaflets and physical objects related to the presidential election and the parliamentary elections. We had people going out and collecting signs. We also archived the websites for the candidates. And certainly we will ask some questions about people's impressions of how the elections were conducted and how they related to the revolution overall. So it is all part of a continuum. For the University on the Square project, we didn't set a very strict end date. There's much more to cover.
Okay, Mr. Stephen, is the University on the Square, the name of the project.
Mm-hmm.
The AUC is no longer in the square.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you choose this title?
Well, the original idea and the idea for the name came from AUC's president, Lisa Anderson. And actually, AUC has been still operating even after the move to New Cairo. We still have had various offices and academic programs at Tahrir Square. And in the early days, January of 2011 and February, a lot of dramatic events occurred around the campus and on the campus. And you can think of so many of the photos, so many of the images taken from the square in the 18 days. They've got that little palace building in the corner. AUC's main building is showing in many of the videos, in many of the images. So it was standing there as a sort of witness to what was going on, and that was the generation of the name.
And you think this will change the cultural life in Egypt?
As far as the cultural life, I would say I hope that it influences people, make them realize that history is happening around them, and it's very important to document history as it's happening, and to appreciate what's going on around them. Already we have people who had photographs on their laptop computer and lost them. So we want people to take action quickly.
So we are lucky with these tools that we can document all this, not like the past, just as you mentioned.
There are some advantages to our new digital tools. There are also some disadvantages. Things are more fleeting than the hard copy photos, for example.
Okay. Mr. Stephen Orgola, University Archivist, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And it's time now for some healthy tips and some ways and ideas to make our lives more energetic and improved with Ashley Gibney and his health tips.